Welcome, everyone. I have to share just an experience I had. I'm only in my third week um, at Starr King, so I'm still quite a little baby embryo in the process. But in my last sermon, the first sermon in the series, part of this is for Dara there on the sound, but I shared about my experience of taking a feminism class in 1995. Philosophy of feminism was the class. And um, I'm taking a class because of that sharing. And what I shared for those who weren't here that week is that because of me taking that class in 1995, I thought all things that had to do with women's injustice, women's rights issues, any mistake that I might have made would be covered and blanketed by the fact that I took this philosophy of feminism class. I was like, no, I took this class, so I'm good. I understand everything there is about all of the 1,000 years of the subjugation and oppression of women's rights. And so I shared that, and I said I hadn't put enough action behind my effort to be a better ally and to have a better understanding of others' experiences. So when I registered for class, there was a class there, one of the only classes that I was supposed to take at the entry level of the first semester, and it was the Latinx theologies with a Y, theology with a Y, theologies, and it's focused on the Latinx liberation movement, and I took that class, and in that class I had this amazing experience because I've never done this before. But the professor invited us to do what I did at the beginning of our service today, which was to invite in the ancestors. And many of us in the class invited in many ancestors. And when I did it and I spoke it aloud and invited the ancestors into the space when we were having class just 2 weeks ago, something physical happened to me, and I can't explain it because I don't know how to put words on it, but I can share this. Whatever it was, it made me start crying right there at the beginning of class. So I'm at the beginning of class trying to put on my I'm smart and I did all my reading face, but I was crying because of this marvelous experience I had of the ancestors coming in. So I'm trying to put action, and what we're doing in our series is it's Be the Change. The Mahatma, Gandhi, he's credited with this quote that we should be the change we want to see in the world. And this week, we're focused on part two, our second principle. We're doing an 8-part series. We're going to go through the 7 affirm principles, and then we're going to do one more on the proposed 8th principle. And so today, we're working on the second principle. And the second principle is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So to start us off, I was doing a lot of different research trying to prepare, and I found this short video clip that I'm going to share with you. And it's from the UU Church in Miami, Florida, which thrilled me because I didn't know there was a UU Church in Miami, Florida, all the years that I lived in Miami, Florida, because I hadn't found the UUs quite yet at that time in my journey. But I lived in Miami for like 5 or 6 years. And so this is a clip from one of their members, and she talks about the second principle. And while you're watching it, I want you to think about what she's saying, because one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Pam to go around and see if anybody has any reaction to what she has to say and how they interpret the second principle: justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So take a look at this short 3-minute clip and then see if it invokes any thought that you'd like to share with us on what we take in. Here we go.
Our second UU principle is that as Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. This is a principle that I think of often and I reflect on frequently. It is something that I try to allow to guide my interactions with people and how I am in relationship with others. Oftentimes, I, try to consider and bring in what it would be like to offer compassion, not just to those who I love, those who are my friends and my family and people who I'm thinking of who are suffering, but what does it mean to bring compassion to people with whom you disagree deeply on many things? What does it look like to still be in relationship with someone and offer them compassion when you feel like they're not supporting or respecting all humankind? How do you bring compassion when it's really difficult, right? How do you offer that to people that you just disagree deeply with? That's something that I've been pondering for a long time. And, this principle really does guide how I try to be in relationship with others. I want to recognize that what we do for others and how we serve them, how we support them, if we are doing it equitably, that means that we need to pay attention to what they need, and then we need to offer it, or we need to do it in the way that they need, right? Moving from thinking of this idea of equality and fairness means giving everyone the same. That's not what everyone in this world needs. Everyone in this world has very different experiences, very different lives, and we all live in very different contexts. And that means that our needs are different. And so bringing equity and bringing justice to people means that we have to really pay attention to the differences, honor our differences, and recognize what people need.
So why her words are sinking in, he said, how do you approach dealing with people that with whom you disagree deeply? And there's a real challenge there, and there's lots of opportunities for that in our current time and place. And then I want you to think about people who just have profoundly different stories and different experiences than you. They may be unemployed, they may be unhoused, they may be from a completely different geographical location, they may have a very different accent. How do you interact and deal with those people? And so with the purpose of the Be the Change challenge that we're trying to engage in on a monthly basis here, it's about taking the principles and translating them from something that's esoteric and up on the wall or in a book and putting it into our daily practice and our daily life. She alluded in the video that it's something that she's constantly working on. So now my question is, I don't want to just talk at you, I'd like to talk with you. In justice, equity, and compassion, agreeing and finding compassion with people that you disagree with, how do you do that? How does that impact your daily journey and your daily life? How do the words that she shared in her view of the second principle impact you? I don't know if anybody on Zoom would like to share. I'll start with the Zoom windows. Any thoughts from anybody here on Zoom that you'd like to share with us?
Just something real short, possibly whatever anybody's thinking or doing, do not take it personal, because there's a lot going on in people's lives that, of course, we don't know. So wherever they're coming from is coming from a personal situation. And with us not taking it personal and having empathy and listening, listening with love, with empathy, with compassion, just not getting upset when something you don't agree with somebody about is coming from maybe their situation, how they live. So that's my input.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else on Zoom have something to share? I can't see Teresa and Deirdre. If you have something, please speak up. Okay. Anyone in the fellowship have any thoughts on the second principle and how you can live them in your daily journey, how you do live them, how you approach it, treating people with justice, equity, and compassion? I'm getting the signal that we do have.
Okay, great. There are
somebody.
some people here who want to share.
Thank you for playing along.
Good morning. I regret I couldn't hear perfectly the film, but I read a news story this past week that really made me think. Within our legal system, we have something called the law of lenity. Dawn, you probably know all about that, but I didn't know there was such a law. And what it means is that when a law hasn't been interpreted in a court, the court is previous to a case that the judge and the jury are instructed to give the benefit of the doubt, really, to interpret it in the loosest or the way most useful and respectful of the person who's being tried. I hope that was clear. But I was thinking about it, how that's really what we all need to do if we respect the integrity of other people. And I kind of like the thought of it being a law, the law of lenity. In the case of the newspaper article, it was about government officials who are in the situation of needing some lenity in court. So it was kind of interesting to me, but lenity, a new thought for me and new byword.
I like it.
I really loved the centering thought about thinking that, oh, okay. Pam's got the microphone there, but I really about thinking that whoever we're interacting with, they may not be here, be around much longer or die by midnight. So does that change the way we think and interact with them? And I would say definitely. I mean, that was a beautiful centering thought. But when I first thought about, well, today, I mean, not that this is the first time I thought about the second principle, but, you know, justice, equity, and compassion. And then I thought about what's going on in the news. Do Tucker Carlson, do I have compassion for him and what they've done now with just these obvious lies? And I began getting angry. And I have no compassion, but then I thought human relations. Luckily, I don't interact with him. So, you know, it's my compassion to politicians is very limited, and almost I don't even think of some of them as human. I know it's a horrible thing to say. I just look at them as destructive forces, and that goes the same, I will say, in mass shootings. I know that it's just mental illness and there has to be another answer, you know, with gun laws and that. And so I have more compassion for them than I do politicians or newscasters. So anyway, that's what I want to say.
Sherry has something too.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick up on what Rachel just said. about having compassion for people that you really strongly disagree with, and maybe feel indirectly or directly hurt by. And I'm going to refer to a wonderful feature film that I saw this last week. And it was about Dolly Parton's childhood. And she wasn't active. She obviously promoted the film, but she was a child, extremely poor, and her mother didn't have enough money. They didn't have enough money to buy her clothes. And her mother made her a coat of many colors from some rags that had been given to the family at the birth of her baby brother who died. And Dolly was just thrilled that her mother had made something especially for her, because she was only like 7 or 8 years old and she had all these other siblings and didn't get a lot of individual attention. She wore it to school and she was teased and taunted mercilessly by her classmates. And then she said she didn't ever want to wear the coat, and she went home and told her family, and her brothers and sisters lined up with her and said, well, when we finish helping Dad pick the tobacco crop, we're going to go with you to school and we're going to teach those other kids a lesson. And when her mom heard that, she was kind of brought Dolly aside and told Dolly that, well, why do you think the children did this? And got her to, she didn't know exactly why they did this, but she said, these children probably hurt you because they weren't loved enough. And Dolly discovered that the children of this family that were sort of bullying her and other kids, that their mother had died and they didn't really have the love of a mother. And that changed her entire attitude. When her siblings said, we're going back to school and we're going to beat these kids up, they arrive and there's a scene. We don't know if it exactly happened, but Dolly says, no, we're not. We're going to invite you to church this Sunday, and there's going to be a feast afterwards, and we really want you to come and enjoy yourselves. And the kids came and they made friends, and she learned the lesson of being compassionate through understanding what motivated these other people to act cruelly. So, you know, I think that's a really important lesson that we have to keep reminding ourselves about.
And is there someone else here within the fellowship who wanted to share a thought?
Yes, the phrase that occurs to me when I read the second principle is that there, but by the grace of God go I. People are born in such different situations and encounter so many different challenges in their lives that it's any wonder that we turn out similar at all to one another. So I think that when I encounter somebody whose opinion is so very different from my own, then I think, you know, that could be me. That could be my shortcomings. And I'm thankful for the fact that that I can have compassion for those people, even though I may starkly disagree with them, as I sometimes do, especially politicians. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't think there's anyone else in the building. So turn this off, Daryl, and turned on back on.
Wow. Thank everyone for sharing those insights and thoughts. You never know where someone else is coming from and what someone else is going through when you encounter them. So you might be getting something, but you don't know what's really behind that. And the real challenge is to have compassion in it. Rachel was referencing the Fox News anchors and how she doesn't have to interact with them personally. And it thought of a little mental challenge that I want everybody to go through and exercise with me. She used Tucker Carlson, so let's use Tucker Carlson. And I want you to think about having to have dinner with Tucker Carlson and everything you would say to him if you were free to share what you think about everything that has been shared and is known. And then I want you to take a pause and I want you to think about the gathering thought from today. And that thought was, if you know Tucker Carlson's gonna die at midnight, the same night that you're having dinner, would it change the way that you address him and the thoughts that you had to share, the ability to have compassion? And I just want you to think about if it shifted and if it moved, what you thought you might be saying to him before you thought about the opening thought and after. And it really reminds me of the power of the closing lines in that thought, which is it'll change your life forever. Because this morning, I don't know if everybody knows this, because sometimes I come off as very loose and very cool, but I'm a perfectionist and almost to the point of obsessive compulsive, but I don't want to disrespect the disorder to say that that's me. But I got up at 4 o'clock this morning so that I could be ready for you guys. And I was going over my notes and my thoughts for today. And I got to the airport on time. There was a really long line at TSA. The important part is I skipped breakfast to make sure that my preparation was thorough. And believe it or not, sometimes when I get hungry, there's this like monster inside of me. They make a Snickers commercial about it, but I change when I get hungry. So I'm headed and I'm planning to have some of the wonderful treats and goodies at the back of the church once I get to Orange County. I get on the plane this morning. I actually fall asleep. They wake us up and say that there's a problem with the hydraulic fluid. Be a couple minutes and we'll be on our way. We're still going to be on time. Many minutes go by. They tell us we have to get on a new plane and I have to make some decisions. Because if I catch the new flight, there's a good chance that if there's any delay that I won't be there with you. And if there is a delay, that there's not going to be anything for the service space that we're in right now. So I decide that I'm going to join you by Zoom like I am here. And I go down to the counter. Now I'm starting to feel the hunger and I'm really getting upset. And I really wanted to see you guys. And I'm really agitated. And if you don't know, my background is I'm an attorney, so I can be very confrontational by training and nature. And I'm going down to the counter to get me some answers to why I have to do this service by Zoom. And I speak to the young lady, I explain to her my situation, and she reacts to me like I just walked up and had missed my flight. And I explained to her, no, the flight is changing. They're going to a new gate. I was on the plane. I'm not late. I just can't make the flight because I have an obligation. And she says, okay, hold on. And she goes to get a manager. And as she goes to get the manager, I see her and the manager talking, and I see the manager start to put on that game face like she's going to have to deal with something on the company line. And she comes and she tells me 3 times, Spirit Airlines doesn't give refunds. And I get really upset. I'm really hungry. So there's a not nice person about to come out and attack this lady. And she's ready for the attack because she must get attacked a lot. She works at Spirit Airlines. And I say, I have to be in Orange County to give a sermon. And all of a sudden the slides that I prepared for you guys run through my head. And the gathering thought runs through my head. And all of a sudden I say, now, what if this lady dies tonight at midnight? And all of a sudden I had to check myself because I have to be the challenge that I'm coming to give a sermon on, to be the challenge in that moment this morning. And I can't express exactly what I did, but I tried to correct my behavior, correct my demeanor, and go from the really angry customer to a content customer that said, listen, I have to go. And she said, after telling me 3 times that they don't give refunds, that she didn't want me to miss my sermon and she was going to put in a request for me to get a refund, and she couldn't promise it would be honored, but that she was going to do that. So she was not going to do that for me, I'm pretty sure, if I had given her the business that I had planned to give her, because of the energy that I was feeling and the discomfort that I was feeling. And then something that I thought was very important that I wanted to point out in the video. Well, actually, I want to take one step back because I've been getting ready for this sermon for 3 weeks in my head. And since I've become a seminarian, I get a lot of questions about what is a UU and what are you doing and who knew, because some people would not say that it was in their eyesight and line of sight that I would be heading in this particular path. But I went to Florida State for undergrad and I ran track there, and I ran track with some really amazing people. And one of them was a guy named Philip Riley. He was a dual athlete, football player, and track athlete. He was the national champion in the hurdles. And he said, "What are you giving your sermon on?" And I said, "The 7 principles." He said, "What are the 7 principles?" Because he knows nothing about what the UUs are. He says, "Tell me what the principle is that you're giving your sermon on." And I told him what the principle was. And he said something that took me a minute to realize what he was saying. He said, "Well, that's simple. That's like brushing your teeth." And I said, "What do you mean, Philip?" He said, "Well, you brush your teeth every day, right?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "So every day we have to try to do those things just like we brush our teeth every day. That's our responsibility, is to do that every day." And trying to find fairness in the world every day, it's a real challenge. And trying to adopt, adapt, and coexist with deeply disagreeable people is a challenge. In my personal journey, I fail at that challenge regularly, especially when people have positions that I'm within speaking distance to address, that are continuing or perpetuating oppression or the thoughts that lead to many of the different oppressions in our society. And in our video, she talked about fairness, and she talked about how challenging it is. And all of us are familiar with the golden rule, right? Can I just get a show of hands? Is everybody familiar with the golden rule? Right? Yes. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, what she was saying in that video is that is not going to bring about a position and a place of fairness in our society, because the golden rule is self-centered. And if the person doesn't have our journey, doesn't have our story, doesn't have our background, if we apply our self-perspective to what that person needs, we're going to get caught up in what they call the savior syndrome, right? We're going to be coming in giving what we think someone needs. And I don't know if anybody's heard of the platinum rule. Has anybody heard of the platinum rule? I see hands, Dara's hand. Okay, the platinum rule is you do unto others what they would like or what they would need or what they are asking for. And that takes some extra steps, because you can't just stay within oneself, right? You have to actually at some point have some sort of communication and connection with whoever the other person is to determine those particular aspects and get to that particular place with the other person. So today I had the real challenge and was faced with bringing compassion into a situation. And I deeply disagreed with her, because when she told me that they caused the delay and that they weren't going to do anything to take accountability for it, but just to take my money, that caused me to have to go into a place within myself and respond the way that we all have the capacity to respond, with kindness and with understanding, right? So the challenge is to think about everything that we shared today and to put it into practice every day. I came across a new term in my Latinx theologies class. I'm going to butcher it because I'm really horrible with foreign languages, but it's called lo cotidiano, and it's the everyday, and it's about spiritual practice. You have to do it every day. It has to be a spiritual practice. And then I come back to my teammate, Philip Riley. He says it's like brushing your teeth. He was saying it's lo cotidiano. And it's a part of the Mujerista line of study in the Latinx liberation movement. So the everyday we have to bring compassion. We have to bring that last comment. We have to remember that we got here through grace, and everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different journey. Everybody has a different place that brings us to where we are. So in our next installment, we're going to work on number 3, principle number 3. And I'm observing within myself, and I hope that we can have some report in Zoom at noon tomorrow about how other people have been attempting to live the principles more vigilantly and purposefully. Because what we know is habits don't happen by accident. Our behaviors don't just occur without intention. So we have to be intentionally thinking about the change we want to see in the world, the change we like to see in our newscasters, the change we like to see in our politicians, the change that we like to see in some of our neighbors and some of our coworkers. And we have to be that change that we want to see in the world, because we can't ask everybody else, all the other 7 billion people, to do it if we're not going to do it ourselves. So, Ashe, Amen, Namaste. Hopefully those words will sit well with you. We're going to ask Carol to do what she does